Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Jason. How are you doing?
Pretty good night tonight. Actually, if anyone was listening a couple episodes ago, I was complaining that the pod cave is a little cluttered up. I was able to do some decluttering here, so I feel very much more like relaxed in here.
Well, that's good. I can't say the same for my workspace. It looks as bad as ever. But I'm very excited to record another episode and chat about Calgary soccer again.
Sounds good. And if you are a new listener to our podcast, Scott, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
So the YYC Soccer Podcast focuses on soccer in Calgary at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We talk about the teams and players from Calgary's soccer community, all the way from grassroots, minor, and amateur leagues up to the post-secondary and professional level.
Yeah, and this week we're going to be talking about Cavalry FC. They had a cup match here this week, and they also have a match on the weekend against Valour. We're going to preview the Wild match. They're playing Vancouver on Saturday afternoon. We'll talk about League One Alberta, do a couple recaps and previews for this upcoming weekend's action. And yeah, that's what's going to cover it this week. No guest this week, Scott, but we'll get one here on the next go around. I think scheduling just didn't quite work out this week, but I think we still have quite a bit to talk about.
Agreed. Let's dive right into it.
Hi, this is Tobias Waszewski. You're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So when it comes to Cavalry FC, let's start with their Wednesday Cup match against Vancouver FC out in Langley, BC. Pretty evenly matched game overall, ended in a 1-1 draw. Jason, I know you were watching this. I was following your tweets. I was watching it as well. What did you think of this match?
Well, I actually would say that I have a hard time believing Vancouver is as bad as their record. I don't think they're a great team or anything, but they had some bite to them. I thought that they played decently, and, it wasn't really a total shock that they scored that first goal.
No, this goal from David Norman Jr. against his former club came shortly before halftime. Interesting kind of sequence of events leading up to it. Vancouver had an indirect free kick that was crossed into the box, and was it Vasco Fry? I can't remember who, but they had a free header, and Marco Carducci was able to make a point-blank save, but conceded the corner kick. And then on the ensuing corner kick, it landed right in the mixer in the 6-yard box, and after a little bit of a scramble, Norman Jr. was able to just poke it in from a yard or two out. Vancouver took the advantage into halftime, and yeah, it was kind of a deserved lead if you think about how the first half went. Possession was pretty even, but Vancouver did produce a couple of good chances, and they were rewarded for it at the end.
That first half, in particular, there were a lot of yellows given out, weren't there? That was there was a lot of that stuff going on.
Oh yeah, there were 4 yellows in the first 30 minutes, which really, I think, set the tone. This was a very physical game. There were a lot of fouls, and some were a little bit nastier than others. And I can't remember how many yellow cards there were in total, but there were also a flurry of them in the second half. Clearly, these two teams don't like each other. Hey, I mean, I think Tommy Wheeldon Jr. has disputed that it's a rivalry, considering how one-sided this series has been in the last few seasons. But it does seem like when they take each other on, there's a lot of animosity between the two.
I would agree with that. But yeah, the whole concept of Cavalry not losing to this team continued on here again, and a little bit of Tobias Waszewski magic there late in the match.
Yeah, how often is this guy going to rescue Cavalry? Hey, it seems like it's happened more and more in 2025 than it even did in 2024. But Waszewski, great skill from him. I think it was around the 86th or 87th minute. He connected well with Nicholas Veiling on the right side, beat his man, and then smashed a shot bottom low corner with his weaker left foot to rescue a point for Cavalry, honestly, and kind of set them up well for the return leg at Spruce Meadows.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard in the post-match press conference, Nicholas Veiling was the player that was on, and I thought that what he said, actually, I think one of us said something similar to this in the previous episode, but he said, Toby just was doing Toby things.
Yeah, he's done it over and over. I think he's such an important player for Cavalry, and hopefully they don't become too reliant on him. Yeah, I don't know how often this season Toby Warshevsky has rescued a result for Cavalry in fairly late in the game. This was actually a bit of deja vu considering he had done it against Vancouver FC in the regular season when these two teams played each other earlier, and Cavalry rescued a point in a 1-1 draw. So a little bit of similarity here out in Langley, but yeah, it keeps their unbeaten run against Vancouver going. I think it's now into the double digits. It's either 11 or 12 games that Cavalry has played Vancouver without losing. It's quite the impressive run.
Yeah, it would have to be at this point based on the number of years that Vancouver's been in the league. So I agree with what you're saying about, like, I hope they don't become too reliant on Toby, but this was a good example of a time where I didn't think Moosey had the greatest game. Like, he wasn't terrible or anything, but he just wasn't like doing Moosey things out there, if you want to say that. It just was sort of a quiet night for him. So it was good in the sense that, you've got another player that you can really rely on. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, Moosey had been red hot for a couple of games. I think 3 games leading into this, he'd scored. And then tonight, it seems like Vancouver really put a lot of focus on defending him. He was playing on the right wing, and yeah, he wasn't able to make those moments happen like he had in the last couple of games. And he did get subbed off probably a little earlier than he would have liked. But no, overall, I think so far we've seen a lot of goals from Warshevsky and from Moosey, and that's fine. But considering the likelihood of injuries or being marked out of the game, you're going to want to see other players step up and start putting the ball in the back of the net, right? I'm thinking, like, has Sergio Camargo scored one yet?
Not sure about that. I think he might have, but one thing I was going to ask you, Scott, because you know tactics way better than I do. Do you think this whole concept of, they really rely on working up the right side? Like, I know sometimes they do stuff on the left. It's not like they never do anything on the left, but so much of their plays is right focused. Do you think that's something that, they could become a bit over reliant on? Like, I'm asking this question as being someone who doesn't know this stuff that well, but I've noticed that a little bit. They're always going on the right side.
They do. Hey, I think it's because usually we see Fraser Aird at right back and then Ali Moosey at right wing, and obviously Fraser Aird likes to get high up the pitch and get involved with the attack, so that gives them more numbers. And then on the left side, we have typically seen Bradley Kambamfewo take a more conservative approach and not get caught up the pitch as much. And we've seen, I think, more players play at left wing, right? Like, we've seen Jake Ferdman there, but we've also seen some other guys this season. Nicholas Veiling has started sometimes, a few others as well, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I'm sure every other team in the league is aware of, that Cavalry likes to attack down the right. And clearly they are preparing for it. And I think that showed against Vancouver.
The second leg of this matchup is going to happen on July 8th at Spruce Meadows. And yeah, I'd say Cavalry probably is feeling pretty decently going into this, knowing that essentially if they win at home, they advance. It's pretty much simple as that.
Yeah, because there's no away goals rule in effect, right? I guess Canada Soccer just revealed that recently. Yeah, you have to assume playing at home. Obviously, it's still over a month away. It's kind of crazy how long the gap is between the first and second leg. So we're not too sure what the squads will look like health-wise, but they'll have to feel good coming into this game, having gotten a 1-1 draw compared to if they were coming in having lost 1-0.
This upcoming weekend here on Sunday at 3 p.m., Spruce Meadows is going to have another Cavalry home match. This time it's going to be Valour.
Yeah, we haven't seen Cavalry take on Valour yet this year, so I'm excited to see how it goes. Valour has obviously had a really challenging start to the regular season. They're down toward the bottom of the table with 4 points after, I think, 6 or 7 games. They've had the least productive offense in the CPL with only 6 goals for. So they're averaging a goal a game. And they've had the joint worst defense with 13 goals conceded in those 6 games. So pretty dismal start to the campaign for Valour. However, they are coming into this one off the back of a really impressive outing in the Canadian Championship.
Magic of the cup, isn't that what we're supposed to say here?
I guess so. Yeah, they managed to pull out a 2-2 draw at home against Vancouver Whitecaps. Nobody expected that, considering how well the Whitecaps have been playing in 2025 and how poorly Valour have been playing. But I didn't watch this game, but from everything I've heard, Valour actually put forward a really impressive showing.
That's exactly what I was going to say as soon as you're done. I was going to say everything I've read is everyone thought Valour played really well. So, sometimes in cup competitions, it doesn't translate, back into league action. But geez, if I was Valour, I'd take whatever I could get and try and hope to try and turn this into something for them. They need something badly. But anyway, yeah, we'll see. But I would say overall, Cavalry definitely favored here at home against Valour.
Yeah, they're similar to how they've never lost to Vancouver. They have a really one-sided head-to-head series with Valour. They played each other 22 times, and Cavalry has won 13 of those games. There have been 6 draws, and then Valour has only won 3. So they'll definitely be the favorite playing at home. They're actually unbeaten in 5 games now. Their last defeat was back on April 26th when they lost 3-1 to Ottawa. So coming into the game with pretty decent form overall.
Hi, this is Grace Doherty, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Okay, so let's move over to the Calgary Wild, and they have a match coming up on Saturday afternoon at 5 p.m. They're playing the Vancouver Rise at Swangard Stadium. Match will be on CBC Gem and NSL.ca. So a bit of maybe a revenge match. I don't know. I've heard a couple comments. I think Lydia Bedford made a comment about this is they're looking to exact some revenge.
Yeah, she said that in the press conference last weekend after the Wild beat Montreal. She referenced the inaugural Northern Super League game, which was between Vancouver and Calgary. Vancouver won that one thanks to a penalty kick goal from Quinn in the first half. Feels like it was a long time ago, Jason. I was looking at how Vancouver has done since then, and it's actually, they have had very similar results to the Wild. They are second in the table, 10 points from 6 games. Calgary is actually down a few spots in 4th place, or tied for 4th with Toronto, with 7 points in 5 games. So if they get a win, they'll be tied on points with Vancouver, as well as Montreal for the time being. But I was looking at statistics and stuff, and I noticed that the Wild and the Rise have the same number of goals, which is 6, and they also have the same number of shots on goal, which is 17. But overall, Calgary has allowed fewer goals, so have a slightly better goal differential.
Yeah, I think that right now, based on what we've seen, the sample size so far, these teams are pretty even. So you got to think that, the Wild has a decent chance going in there. I think there's always, going to be some level of advantage for a home team in any match. But on balance, these two teams seem to be playing very similarly at very similar levels.
Yeah. I don't know how the pitch is at Swangard right now, but the one game I saw bits and pieces of that the Rise played there, the turf wasn't in very great condition, but that was probably more than a month ago, so it could have changed by now. But you have to assume that Vancouver will be more comfortable playing on that surface than the Wild, who've probably gotten used to the turf at McMahon.
One of the head people for TSS Rovers made a comment, I think on social media, saying that it's going to be interesting to see how Swangard will hold up with Rise games, Vancouver Whitecaps 2 games, TSS Rovers, both men's and women's games. That's a very busy stadium for pro-am / professional action right now. So that turf could be, it might have a hard time this year.
Yeah. I know that like another viable stadium in Vancouver, maybe a bit too small for these teams, but Thunderbird Stadium at the University of British Columbia has a really nice grandstand. But yeah, it's obviously a football pitch with artificial turf and lines. So definitely not what you want to see. Yeah, you make a good point that the Swangard pitch is going to be hosting a lot of matches across those 3 different leagues this spring and summer.
So a couple more things we want to mention about the Wild. We were talking about international call-ups, and one other one was added since we last recorded, and as expected, Jackie Burns got called up to Northern Ireland. So right now we're at 5, and I don't know if there's going to be any more. I know that Sonia O'Neill as Venezuela. I don't think Venezuela's announced their team yet, so that's possible, I guess. But definitely a lot of call-ups, and we'll have to see. I don't think that Wales U21 is playing in this window that I'm aware of. So I don't think the Wild are going to lose the Stewart sisters.
But you look at the players that are going, and apart from Jackie Burns, who's the number 2 goalkeeper at the moment, they're all pretty regular players, right? So they will be needing to draw from their roster, and we'll see how deep the Wild's team really is. Because if you think about it, Jacqueline Savitsky is like an almost 90-minute a match player. Cully Johnson has started, I think, most games. Michaela Moore is like a start every game, play 90 minutes every game, center back. And Allie Green is very experienced as well. So some big departures.
We'll have to see on how it actually works based on the window that the Wild doesn't have any matches actually in the window, but I believe they have a match like basically one day after the window ends. So I'm really not so sure how plausible it will be that some of these players will be able to make it back from halfway around the world in some cases and be able to suit up. Congrats to them all. It's always an honor to represent your country. One final NSL note to talk about is Calgarian Mya Jones. We've mused on the podcast a couple times about where is she and how come she's not playing for AFC Toronto. Well, I guess we finally got an answer on that, Scott.
Yeah, you asked the club directly, and they have verified that she is injured at the moment. So that's why we haven't seen Mya Jones yet. I do think, considering her caliber and her experience, she would very definitely be playing if she were fit. And you have to think, considering how well Toronto's forward Esther Okoronkwo has been doing, that would be a pretty scary duo up top for AFC Toronto.
When I got the response back, it didn't give any details about type of injury or timelines and stuff. But yeah, she's missed the first, she hasn't played yet. So hopefully she gets she recovers quickly and gets back on the pitch.
This is Mila Schneider, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Okay, it's time to talk some League One Alberta, and we'll start with a recap of the match on Tuesday involving some Calgary-based teams. And actually, Scott, you can give us a first-hand report on this one.
Yeah, I finally got out to a League One game. I managed to get to Macron for the Foothills versus Cavalry U21 game. I actually showed up a few minutes late, and when I walked in, they were just about to kick off, and I assumed that was the game starting. But actually, Foothills had just scored to make it 1-0. So it must have been pretty early into the game because I wasn't that late, but I spent the entire first half thinking it was 0-0 and thinking that Cavalry was doing quite well to kind of hold on to that. And then I found out that it was 1-0 toward halftime. But anyway, the match itself was, I don't want to say one-sided, but you could tell that Foothills, they're the much bigger and stronger team. They had most of the ball, produced better chances. Cavalry defended quite well, though, and managed to stay in it right up until the end of the game, and did produce a couple of okay attacks. But they were missing some of their important players. And yeah, Foothills, you could just see like the players are clearly 2 or 3, or in some cases 4 years older than the Cavalry players.
As you said, Foothills definitely is an older team, more experienced team. They've definitely brought in some players even this year. Their keeper, I think his name is it Dietz, or I think is his last name. That dude looks like, I don't know how old he is, but he looks like he's mid-20s. Like, he's the age gap is between, say, a guy like him and say some of the Cavalry players is kind of significant.
Mm-hmm. Or you look at Foothills' center back is Caden Rogozinski, and he's a grown man, right? And Cavalry's guys, you can just see that they've still got, some of them don't have like facial hair. They've still got those skinny arms that you see, 16-year-olds have when they haven't really developed fully yet. But they did well, and they were down a man for a lot of the game. I guess they would have gotten a red card before the penalty kick goal, which Charles Nana scored. It was tough for them, but overall, I thought Foothills showed a lot of quality, and they clearly have some talented players. Guys who stood out, definitely Charles Nana, who was playing at right wing. He was partnered by Teslosh David who's playing right back. He's from State. From Foothills, I think their captain, his name is Diego something, and holding midfield. He was pretty good on the ball. And then from Cavalry's perspective, the player who stood out the most was Michael Harms, playing at left back. Didn't do anything like flashy or spectacular, but he's just such a reliable player. He doesn't lose the ball. He wins his tackles. He wins a lot of 50-50s that you wouldn't expect him to. So it was really enjoyable to watch him duel with Charles Nana throughout most of this game.
And on Friday, we have a full slate of matches like we usually do, and 3 matches this time in Calgary. There's Foothills against BTB, that's at Broadview. Cavalry and Wild will play St. Albert at Macron, and Blizzard will play Rangers at the West Soccer Dome.
Yeah, all kinds of opportunity to get out and watch some decent high-level amateur soccer this Friday night.
First match at Broadview, which is pretty close to where I am. I know I've got a couple other things I need to do that night, but I'm hoping to get there maybe for at least a little bit of it if possible.
Yeah, and basically, no matter what part of the city you're in, you don't have too long of a trek because obviously Macron is out southeast, West Soccer Dome to watch Blizzard versus Rangers. That's out in the northwest. Broadview is very central, so decent opportunities for Calgarians to get out and watch some League One games on Friday night. And then finally, in terms of League One action, also on Friday night up in Edmonton, Calgary Villains will be taking on Edmonton Scottish. And hopefully the Villains can kickstart their campaign, which they've really been struggling so far.
Hi guys, it's Elijah Adekubi, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, Scott, couple more things to talk about before we wrap up. Mostly Calgary connections to the men's and women's national programs.
Yeah, the Gold Cup is coming up fairly soon, and the 60-man preliminary roster for the men's national team has been revealed. 5 players who are either from Calgary or have deep connections to the city, all of whom I think will be familiar names to people who listen to this podcast regularly.
Sam Adekugbe, Scott Kennedy, Dominic Zator, Victor Laturi, and Joel Waterman are all on that preliminary 60-man list. So by no means does that mean you're guaranteed a slot for the Gold Cup, but I'd rather be on that list than not be on that list.
And then there's also something called the Canadian Shield Tournament taking place June 7th and 10th in Toronto. Jason, I don't really know anything about this. Can you shed some light on, you put down that Sam Adekugbe and Joel Waterman are going to be involved with this as well.
This is a tournament, and Canada Soccer says it's going to be a regular occurrence. Now, I don't know if it means on an annual basis or whatever. During that FIFA window, they're going to have essentially a mini tournament. Canada is going to have Ukraine, Cote d'Ivoire, and New Zealand, and they're gonna play matches against each other. And I believe the way Canada's schedule is set up, they're going to play Ukraine on the 7th and Cote d'Ivoire on the 10th. It doesn't seem like they've got like a playoff to figure out who gets this trophy, this Canadian Shield. But anyway, the bottom line is they're having this little tournament in Toronto, and they're bringing together a national team. So it's kind of I think could be a good initiative, good opportunity, Canadian men's team to play at home.
And that's right before the Gold Cup gets going. So I guess you could look at it as some warm-up games for that tournament as well. So final thing we'll mention before wrapping up this episode is that Kaylee Hunter, who is going to be playing for Canada at the CONCACAF U20 Championships, she's down in Costa Rica at the moment. She should be back in time to play in Calgary when Toronto plays the Wild at McMahon Stadium on June 14th.
End date of that tournament, if assuming you make it all the way, I think is the 9th or something like that. So there is a little bit of a window. So obviously I hope Canada does well and she does well at the championships, but I'm definitely have an eye to that match at McMahon in the middle of June.
Yeah, I definitely want to be at that one as well.
Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive and find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links there so you can buy Scott's book. It's all about the history of pro soccer in Calgary. You can leave a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can also interact with us on social media, such as Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.